Brian is a Shetland pony. Quite a handsome one, he likes to think. He is tall, as far as Shetland ponies can be tall, has a long flowing mane of gold, so he's been told, and a tail that his keeper plaits with a yellow bow. He has his own little paddock in a zoo, and he is very popular. All the children love to stroke his golden mane, feed him carrots, and he loves to prance and trot along swishing his tail. Brian would say he had a pretty good life, except one thing. He doesn't want to be a pony. He can see his reflection in his drinking water and admits he looks like a pony. But he wants to be a unicorn. Yes, a unicorn. A lovely, white-furred, swishy-tailed, white-maned unicorn. They're popular, and everyone loves a unicorn. What can I do? He asked himself one day. What am I missing? He looked hard at his reflection, and then it struck him. I would look more like a unicorn if only I had a horn. Where can I get one from? Brian realised that there were other animals in the zoo with horns and decided to ask them if he could borrow them. Fortunately, his neighbour was called Mavis, and she was a rhino with an impressive horn right on her nose that curved majestically upwards. Mavis, can I borrow your horn? Brian asked. Mavis, rather grumpily, looked up from her breakfast. Everyone knows rhinos do not like being disturbed when they're eating.
Don't be stupid, Brian. My horn is attached to my head. All rhinos have horns.
Disappointed, Brian moved on until he came to the reindeer paddock. There were 2 furry reindeer with lovely horns, jolly scarves, and lovely red noses. He didn't know the reindeer by name, but knew they got a lot of attention, especially at Christmas time. Hello! The reindeer looked up at him, and then went back to their breakfast. Excuse me, reindeer. Sorry, I don't know your names, but I was admiring your wonderful horns and was wondering if you would lend me one. You see, I want to be a unicorn, and your horns are so big and you have so many between you that you wouldn't miss one, surely. The reindeer looked up and stared at Brian. Slowly their faces crinkled and they started laughing at him. Brian felt this very rude and asked, Why are you laughing? The reindeer spoke at the same time. One, these, they pointed to their magnificent 6-pronged antlers, are called antlers, not horns. And 2, we cannot just lend them to you. They are part of us. They grow from our heads. We are reindeer. We have antlers. You are a pony, not a unicorn, and not a reindeer. Go away, silly pony. Slightly annoyed, but feeling ashamed, Brian moved on. Next he went to the goat paddock and saw Derek, a very wise goat he happened to know, chewing thoughtfully on his breakfast. Derek, I want a horn, as I'm a unicorn, not a pony. The rhino and the reindeer have both refused. Can I have one of yours? You do have 2 after all. Derek looked at Brian and chewed some more, and then gently said, But Brian, you are a pony. Unicorns are not real, and besides, my horns are attached to my head. All goats have horns, ponies do not. But I want to be a unicorn. They are better than ponies. Really? Said Derek. I always thought you were very handsome, just as you are, and you are very popular with the children. Yes, but imagine how popular I would be if I had a horn. Derek sighed, and turned away, shaking his head. A sad Brian walked on until he came across a large branch from a fallen tree. I wonder, he thought. Brian ducked his head. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but eventually he managed to lift his head and a jagged prong of the branch stuck out at a jaunty angle. He looked, and indeed from a distance, with the rising sun behind him, he felt he must look like a very handsome unicorn. As the zoo opened and the visitors poured in, Brian pranced around his paddock with his new unicorn horn. In his mind, each swish of his mane released a rainbow, and every step left flowers under hoof. So lost was he in his unicorn world, he didn't notice the children passing by and the giggles and the occasional comment.
"Oh no! Who stuck a branch on Brian's head? He looks so silly!"
Brian eventually stopped prancing and moved towards the fence for his usual petting. He was expecting even more carrots to be fed to him, even more oohs and ahs, and more than ever lots of lovely strokes on his head and mane. Nothing. Child after child passed him by, some sniggering and some crying. Even sadder, Brian walked over to his water trough and looked at his reflection, covered in mud from his prancing, not rainbows, with a piece of dirty jagged wood tangled around his head. He did indeed look frightful, not magnificent, and certainly not like a unicorn. Brian slumped to the ground and cried.
Hello, Brian. How are you, my friend? What have you done to yourself?
It was Felix, his keeper.
That looks painful. Let's get that branch off your head and clean you up.
Felix gently led Brian to his stall, where he took the branch off, washed him with his favourite shampoo, and then groomed him until he looked like the old Brian, not the unicorn Brian.
There, that's better, isn't it, Brian? You know you are a handsome fellow with your golden mane. And now I have plaited your tail with an extra special red ribbon. Shall we see what your fans think?
Brian was led out into the paddock and emerged slowly. It wasn't long before he heard the ooh and aww from the children, and as he approached the fence, one little girl held out his favourite, a carrot, and then stroked his golden mane.
"Oh, Brian, we love you!"
Brian realised at that moment that he didn't need to be a unicorn. He was loved for being Brian the pony, and that was good enough for him. The end.